jump-starting the St. Croix economy?
Well, you know, one of the things that I've been working on for a really long time with Senator Novell Francis, I worked a lot on his policy piece, and we've been trying to get a free trade zone in St. Croix. So if you look if you're familiar with St. Croix, from the refinery all the way down to the airport, end of the airport, it's a tremendous opportunity for development. The refinery has at least 4 power plants, it has 2 desal plants, it has a dump, it has a machine shop. It's an incredible place. I worked there for a number of years in materials management. And then when you go next door, also the refinery has a deep water port. And then next to it is the container port, which is also another deep water port. And then next to it is the Martin Marietta, old Martin Marietta Renaissance property. They're taking down the coal plant now, but in there's over 900 acres of industrially zoned land. Diageo has an extra 2 megawatts of power. Then you go next door, you have the racetrack, you have the dump facility, then you have a 10,000-foot runway with an industrial park, and then you have over 400 acres of beachfront property for development. What you have there is the ability now to get in and get a power producer that can produce 17 cents per kilowatt power that is unregulated by the PSC. That could start revitalizing our small manufacturing industry in St. Croix, bringing new jobs.
Like a private WAPA?
Yes, a private WAPA. And you also have the ability now to do marine development, whether it's ship inspections, it's marine repair. The BVI has the 3rd largest charter fleet in the world, and they're taking their boats as far as Trinidad in order to be repaired. The boat yards in Puerto Rico are stocked up, so are the ones in St. Thomas. Okay. St. Croix already has the land, so in marine repair, all these fancy yachts, we have the basins that you can put them, we have the off-ramps where you could take them and dry dock them. The opportunity is there. One of the things that we're working on now is a Marine Development Act, which will help all of this. We never market our assets. All these assets that we have dormant in St. Croix. Tregenza passed legislation of over $3 million to dredge the Gallows Bay port and develop Christiansted. Hasn't happened. $33 million has been allocated so far for the Frederiksted Polly Joseph Stadium. Hasn't happened. Getting these things up and going. In our 90-day plan, what we plan to do is have issue a RFP for shovel-ready private sector projects. Okay. And what we plan on doing is getting 3 main projects on each island, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix Water Island if they have one too. And really looking at putting a project manager on them to facilitate, whether it's a business license, CZM permit, Army Corps, financing, whatever it needs to keep that button pressed. And for me as governor to be able to go to New York if I have to, or wherever, to get that financing for them and get the full faith and pledge of the Virgin Islands government. That does so much for business development. The other thing that we want to do is, for years we have been relying on other developers to come to the Virgin Islands and tell us where things should be. Having a proper land and water use plan where we've identified properties that we want to have a hotel, want to have a recreation, green spaces, we want light industry here, will facilitate this process so much, because now we won't have to have a grand debate every time we want to do an economic development project. Exploiting the $120 million fiber optic cable that we have, I really believe that we have a huge future in services. If you can work from anywhere, why not work from here? We have beautiful weather. All we need is reliable power and high-speed internet. And then finally, we have 5 tax incentive programs that nobody knows about. Really going to the United States and focusing in on those fast company type of company in Inc. magazine, where you have those 500 small companies that do like $10–20 million in revenue, getting them to relocate to the Virgin Islands and use our people in the process. All of those things are what I see the new economy of the Virgin Islands for. I mean, there'll always be tourism, and we got a lot of plans for that in St. Croix as well as St. Thomas, freshening our product. I get so energized when I talk about it because there's just so much opportunity out there, and we're wasting time talking and really getting the government. When we talk about our first pillar is stabilizing the government. When you have companies coming to the Virgin Islands, you have to be able to act quickly. We have a tight window now where we have a thriving stock market and people have money to invest. If this window closes, we lose our opportunity. So we have a lot of work to do, but in terms of generating money, I got your ideas and I got the energy along with trains.
Right.
I just wanted to underscore with regard to Gallows Bay. So that impact, you know, a lot of people say they passed it.
I thought they were waiting for the permit or something.
They're waiting on the permits, but I supported the legislation to provide funding for the dredging. There's like a $3.5 million award to dredge the Schooner Bay Channel. But it's an important thing to emphasize because just as cruise lines are building huge ships,
and bigger
they're
ships.
building smaller ships as well, like the Ritz-Carlton is going to have its own line. And what they're looking for are the smaller, less traveled ports, places like Mustique, places like Gallows Bay. And that luxury line, those small luxury lines, typically their passengers are spending more per capita than the larger line. So that's important. We have also discussed, in addition to the things that Albert said, town development. I mean, when you come through Christiansted, when you come through Frederickstead, when you come through back street of Charlotte Amalia, there's just so much of this urban blight that we have to address and provide incentives for people to invest in. And what's also very critical, and a lot of people don't think about this, we need to facilitate movement between the islands of the territory.
Big time.
We need to provide affordable transportation.
180 round trip is the cheapest that I've seen.
Yeah. It's been as high as $300 round trip to go between St. Thomas and St. Croix. And if we have one economy, if we're going to have an economy where we can bounce off of one another, people from St. Thomas can go to St. Croix and support the economy there, and people from St. Croix, agricultural products moving back and forth between the islands. We have to provide affordable transportation, and that's one of the pieces that we've talked about as well.
You talked about revitalizing the towns, and I think, Albert, you talked about that in the forums as well. You mentioned giving EDC-like benefits to businesses that people would want in the towns.
Right.
You also mentioned investing in downtown public schools and universal Wi-Fi, which I'm sure everybody's happy about. Walking around downtown, you don't have to get on your data plan.
You stay connected all the time because, you know, so I like I was just telling you in the break that I really love to see social interaction and how communities and societies develop. When you look at the freeway in America and how it is able to connect cities and allow people to live at further distances and commute, that's what the internet is, right? So what we in the Virgin Islands, for as far as we can remember, the only way to get money in here was on the docks or in the air. Now we have this tremendous pipeline that allows us to access the entire world market. And we're not taking advantage of it. And what we got to understand is that one little drop off the internet will swell this economy. And we're not focusing on it. So giving more people, more students access to the internet is crucial, not only to our future development, but to building industry from within. When you look at the young man, McKeel, Paris, that just won that, this is a Virgin Islander with very little resources. We don't have a formal pool training program or some school where kids go to practice pool. Won a world championship. Imagine if we were investing in our students in a specific way to make sure that we create the next Jeff Bezos, and we really put some work into creating the next Tim Duncan, what the impact would have. So, you know, when we look at our vision for the Virgin Islands, it's the best in tourism, talent, and technology in the Caribbean. And you have to be able to understand that if the American economy has switched to service industries, right, people are the main generating factor of value because the ideas, the innovation, we have not shifted it in terms of a community and getting that education in a way that we kind of create an arena for people to come out of that and do wonderful things on the internet, be able to play sports, music, art, and develop our society in a whole, but bring a lot of new currency, improve our our tourism market. Those are the things that we really see as being the base blocks of building a better Virgin Islands.
One of the things that you said a while back was that the Virgin Islands is still teaching its students in a 20th century environment.
That's
when
right.
we're living in a 21st century environment. And is that what you mean when you say we need to educate our people better?
Well, I get so irritated, you know, when I go to, when I see my daughter's homework and she has a little book planner and she's writing down all the dates of her tests. I'm like, listen, if you're going to work in this community, in the 21st century, they need to be teaching you how to do this on your phone or on your iPad, because even now, that's a medium that everybody's using. You go to a doctor's office or check into a hospital, doctors not working with clipboards, they're working with iPads. So we should be teaching our students not how to watch Netflix, but how do you incorporate Excel into your life in terms of using it as a program? What kind of apps are available out there that would allow you to be an entrepreneur? In junior achievement, which I was the executive director of for a while, we had this thing called Innovation Camp, and the kids, in 4 hours, they would be able to come up with new enterprises and businesses that would be some amazing products, like the Bully Watch, a watch that kept your GPS, and if you press the button, it would alert everybody who had the watch that you were being bullied and where you were located.
Oh.
So, I mean, the innovation is there, but we have to give them the resources now that we could continue to develop our young people.
Let's turn to healthcare. Now, every year, our CEOs, the CEOs of the hospitals, come to the Senate and lament underfunding or the cost of uncompensated care to them. And then you have problems like, you know, we have Medicaid expansion, but there's still people who are within certain brackets of income that they are not earning low enough to qualify for that, but they also don't have employers who offer them insurance, and they're kind of left out in the cold. So there are these different issues. How would you propose to kind of like make healthcare sort of more accessible to Virgin Islanders?
Tregenza likes this question.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
So it's two-part.
Well, I think it's a couple of things, and that's the last point that you touched on is very important. It's critical because part of the uncompensated care is the fact that we have so many uninsured people in the territory, and we do have to attract more products. Whether you can get it as a small company, small businesses have a very difficult time insuring their employees. So we have to bring that piece back. Now, it's tempting when you're talking about healthcare to look at the immediate thing because that's the pressing thing. But in leadership, you also have to be expansive and think about how do you envision the future and what are the pieces of it. A very, very big piece, I believe, of our healthcare system and why I supported it so strongly is the establishment of the medical school at the university. Because if you notice any area where you see a medical school founded, the entire environment changes. The health environment changes. You attract more professionals, which is one of the difficulties that we have. You attract the ancillary industries, then your economy prospers on a whole, and you can engage even in medical tourism. We are poised to have this funding to use, whether we decide to break down the hospitals or not, to certainly make them state-of-the-art in terms of their ability to respond to the health care of our residents. And you have pivotal pieces already in place. You have a cardiac center at the Wang Louis Hospital. You have a cancer center at the hospital in St. Thomas. And so if you thought about how you bring all of these pieces together, the possibility is great to create a dynamic healthcare system that people can come here to get healthcare, the same way that we would go to Puerto Rico not very long ago to do that.
So people don't have to fly off anymore. I think that's a problem for a lot of people.
And it's not a far off concept. We already have constructed some of the facilities for the school. The administration building is already constructed at the campus of the St. Thomas campus and the simulation center in St. Croix. I believe when we get that off the ground and I personally believe I have a difference of opinion with regard to how the university pursued it.
Okay.
Because we had two choices on the table. One was to create a medical school in connection with a known university,
Okay.
Boston, that we already have a relationship
Yeah.
with, Emory, Johns Hopkins, who knows. And the other was to start from scratch. We decided to start from scratch because some donor said he was going to give us $30 million, and that I haven't seen it yet. But I believe we should get it back on track. And